One treat. There you go. I love you. Yeah, I love you. Feel like you just used me. What's going on, guys? Today, I want to talk about Matt Damon and why he is one of like my favorite actors. I think Matt Damon is so underrated. Like, bro is handsome. I think guy has range. I think he's a great actor. He is always in like top tier movies. I think Matt Damon is a gem, and he's one of my favorite actors. These are my favorite movies of his. So I'm going to go over 12 movies today and rank them from worst to best. I have not seen every movie that he has been in. I'm not going to talk about Stillwater, Green Zone, Rainmaker, Good Shepherd. I left The Rip off of this list because I think that was just more of a Netflix movie. So I'm going to go over 12 movies that all released in theaters that I have seen. I'm going to rank them. Number 12! The first movie I want to talk about, number 12, is The Great Wall. Like, it's a little goofy. This movie came out in 2017. My expectation going into this movie was like, they were very low. They were very low. I want to tell you see the cover, you see Matt Damon in his wig, and you're just like, where is this going to go? But like, the action and, how it looks, and the period piece, right, taking place in China, I went into the movie with those low expectations, but I came out like pleasantly surprised, and it was still kind of just a fun watch. I don't think this movie like takes itself too serious. I think it's just a fun period piece that takes place in China, on the Great Wall, where Matt Damon, he is looking to protect China and the Great Wall against these like monsters, right? It kind of goes like into the lore as far as the, why the Great Wall was created, and essentially like it was created to keep out these monsters. And for generations, there's been these warriors that just continue to defend the wall and kill these monsters. Of course, you have Matt Damon in this movie. You have William Dafoe. You also have Pedro Pascal, who all I think, don't do a super bad job. I was not a fan of course, like the costumes and the outfits and things like that. I think it just made it really tough to get sucked into this universe and take it seriously. But that being said, it was still a fun watch. The Great Wall is worth a watch if you just want to have fun and see some action, and maybe you're knocking back a beer or two. Moving on to number 11, we have The Last Duel, which is another period piece. This one takes place in like medieval times. Again, my expectation going into this movie was a little lower, but I was more pleasantly surprised in this movie than I was The Great Wall. The reason being is I think this movie takes itself more seriously, and it really like just dives into the period. It stars Matt Damon, Adam Driver, Ben Affleck, and Jodie Comer. Comer. All of them do a great job. I think the acting in this movie is way better. I think the set design and the costuming and just being sucked into this world is done way better than The Great Wall. It was also directed by Ridley Scott, who directed Gladiator, Alien, Blade Runner, The Martian, American Gangster. So you go into this movie directed by Ridley Scott, starring Matt Damon. It looks like a good period piece, and it does great. It's a great story. I think it just missed the mark on what it was trying to accomplish. Essentially, what happens is it tells this story from 3 different point of views. It's based on a true story where it discusses the last like trial by combat known in history, where you have this woman that was sexually assaulted, and it's told in 3 different point of views: by the woman, by the husband Matt Damon, and it is told by the assaulter, who's played by Adam Driver. And that sounds like a really cool idea, and I like what they were going for. It just didn't land for me, and I think that's because the different point of views felt really similar. It just feels like we're repeating the same movie, and this movie is like 2 hours and 30 minutes, so it's kind of a long trek, and so it just feels like a really slow burn, and it feels almost repetitive as you go through the movie. Once you kind of get into the third act, you kind of see things really kind of conjoin, and it becomes much more apparent the different like differences. I wish they would have made the point of views more contrasting so that you could really tell a difference and get sucked into it and be like, okay, this is point of view 1, boom, like so different. This is point of view 2, wow. This is point of view 3, what? But instead they all felt the same, and it just made the movie really repetitive for me. That being said, it's still a really beautiful movie. I think you get really sucked into that medieval world. I think Matt Damon does a really good job with his acting. He is playing this like cold husband that is just like focused on himself and not focused on his wife. And then you have Adam Driver, who I think he does very well in acting his role, where he's just kind of this scumbag, right? He sexually assaulted this woman and he tries to justify his actions. And then you have, Jodie Comer, who I think really steals the show. She is able to capture 3 different versions of herself in this movie. Without her, the movie flops 1000%. It's a great movie for those that really will like that medieval fantasy, like historical drama piece. You just have to go into it knowing that it's a little bit of a slow burn and you really have to pay attention to the little details. And that brings me to number 10, which is Elysium, which is a beautiful sci-fi action movie that I really enjoyed. So going into Elysium, I had medium expectations. You see the poster of Elysium, and he has this very drastic look to him. He has a shaved head. He's, dressed up in this like mech robotic suit, and you're like, where is this gonna go? This movie takes place in a futuristic, world, Earth, right? I think it takes place in like 2150. The Earth is this barren desert wasteland, and then you have all the billionaires and all the rich people that are living in space on this, spaceship. Matt Damon is on Earth, previously was a criminal. He's kind of down on his luck, but he's on the straight and narrow. And so he's working, and then he suffers like an accident at work, and he ends up being really sick. So on Earth, the healthcare is really bad. Like if you get sick or if something happens, you're screwed. So Matt Damon sets out on wanting to heal himself and be better and get better. So he is trying to get on that spaceship by all means necessary. He ends up working for these mercenaries and he's trying to get on that ship. He is in this mech suit because his body is really sick. And then it also kind of gives him this overpowered strength. And as the movie goes on, he wants to take care of himself, but he also wants to take care of others. And he wants to equalize, the classes, the ultra rich and the ultra poor. And he wants to give that equality back. So I thought this movie looked beautiful. It shows these shots zooming out where you see Earth. I thought the spaceship in the sky where all the rich people lived, I thought was really awesome looking. It kind of reminded me of like a Halo ring. The mech suit and robotic suit that Matt Damon is wearing, I thought was a really cool idea. It was just kind of clunky. I don't think you're going to be disappointed with how it looks as far as this deserted, almost post-apocalyptic world that really dives into, the desert landscape, Latino culture, it kind of fights these battles as far as healthcare access, immigration. You have these beautiful space scenes that take place and the sci-fi aspect as far as the robots and the mech suits and the med bays where like if you get your face blown off, the med bay is just going to completely reconstruct your face and heal it. This is another movie where I think it fell flat as far as the pacing or the storytelling. We Matt Damon, help these mercenaries to do this job and get this like a really important data, but we don't really know what the data does. You have this love interest that I feel gets painted as more powerful than it really is, just because you don't get a lot of background or you don't get a lot of time. All that being said, Elysium I think is a really fun sci-fi movie that just falls flat a little bit on the storytelling. Number 9 is Rounders. This one I felt I enjoyed maybe a little more than others just because I love playing cards. I love playing Texas Hold'em. I love playing blackjack. And so this movie is essentially about a guy that he loses everything playing Texas Hold'em, and then he goes straight and narrow, right? He's out of the game. He's in school trying to be a lawyer. He's got a job. He's got a fiance. But then his buddy gets out of jail, and of course, he kind of gets sucked back into that scene. His buddy is a really bad influence on him and just goes ahead and gets him back into playing cards. And because of that, he gets in with the wrong people. He owes money to the Russians, and now they're after him to get his money back. And so he's trying to play, all this poker to try and get money to pay them back. It stars Matt Damon. It also stars Edward Norton. And it's a fun watch. I really liked it. I think it captures, like, gambling. It captures, like, the highs of gambling and the hustle and the, staying up all night and the winning and all the, addictive qualities of gambling. And then it also captures the lows. It captures those lows of losing everything, losing, relationships, losing how it may affect work. You could really get in deep if you're getting in with the wrong people. So I think Matt Damon's character has this really good story arc where it just covers the highs and the lows and how he overcomes that. And there's something, too, that I really like about these old 90s movies that I think just really capture the era. To me, they feel so much more artistic. I think this movie does a really great job at capturing the feel and the look of the streets of New York and how Matt Damon goes to play a Texas Hold'em game in a mansion with these trust fund kids that are in college. And then he goes down the street and he's playing Texas Hold'em with New York cops in the back room. If you kind of like that throwback New York City kind of vibe, then I think this is going to be a good one. The eighth movie that I want to talk about is called Invictus, which came out in 2009. Going into this movie, I didn't know too much what was going to happen because I don't know much about rugby, but I knew that it was a sports drama based on a true story. It stars Morgan Freeman, and it did really well. It was up for some Academy Awards. This one goes over the story about South Africa getting its independence. And now that South Africa has gained its independence as a democratic country, we have Morgan Freeman who is trying to unite. And so Morgan Freeman is trying to unite this country again, and he uses sports to do so. Rugby being very popular in South Africa, he's watching the South African rugby team, and he sees how people from South Africa aren't cheering for the team. They're cheering for the other people, right? And so he thinks of this great idea to where he can use this rugby team to unite everybody. If everybody loves this rugby team, maybe we can find common ground and really be brought together. And so the World Cup is coming up for rugby, and he wants the South African rugby team to win the World Cup. Spoiler alert, they do. South Africa has won the World Cup for rugby more than any other country. They've won it 4 times, and this was the first time that they won it. You have Matt Damon, who stars as the captain of the rugby team, and he's trying to understand Morgan Freeman's vision. And you just have this really awesome story arc of how these two really try and unite everybody. And it's a really beautiful thing to watch. And I don't choke up very much in movies, but this one made me choke up a little bit towards the end because it just has a really good ending. And you're really able to see the vision that Nelson Mandela, played by Morgan Freeman, had by the end of the movie. Normally, I'm not a huge fan on sports movies because these sports scenes always feel like so funky and acted and weird. But with this movie, watching the rugby scenes, you feel like you're there on the field playing rugby with them. Like, I think the actors got in there and they were actually playing rugby and they were going at it, and you could see the struggle and you see how beat up they get through the game. They're playing in different weather. So that was really cool to see. You see Matt Damon really capture this role as a leader, leading his team, and ultimately leading his country as a rugby player. It was also directed by Clint Eastwood, which kind of threw me for a loop, but I really appreciated his vision by the end of the movie. It does have a little bit of a political spin to it because that's the primary focus of the movie. So it's kind of a 50-50 where it's 50% sports, 50% political drama based on a true story historical piece. And you're really able to see how those kind of intertwine with each other. And by the end of the movie, I promise you won't be disappointed. Awesome, beautiful movie. Go watch it. Number 7, how can you not talk about the Bourne series? I love the Bourne series. I don't think they are super in-depth as far as story and character development. I think they are shut your brain off, awesome action movies. Maybe throw it in the background while you're doing laundry, while you're doing meal prep. Yes, there's a bit of a deeper story as far as like, who is Jason Bourne? Why did he lose his memory? Who is he working for? Why is the CIA after him? But I think that's the basis of it right there. That's really all you need to know. You can just go in after that, watch all these awesome action scenes, watch Jason Bourne go crazy and have really cool scenes where they're jumping on top of trains, or really cool scenes where he's on a dirt bike trying to escape, really cool scenes where he kills a guy with a pen. When these movies came out in the early 2000s, I think they were some of the best action films that came out, and I think they were almost kind of groundbreaking as far as setting the pace for more action films that came out after them. I think the story is very complete. Each one feels similar and connected, but also different. My favorite personally is the last one. I like Ultimatum the most. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the Bourne series because I think most people recognize how great they are, and they're just a really fun watch. And so now we're getting into some really good movies that I thoroughly enjoyed and are some of my favorite movies. I don't think you can be disappointed by really any of these movies. Looking at the remaining movies in this list, it got really hard for me to rank them because I really enjoyed all of them. And depending on the day, I'm probably going to switch some of these ranks. So take it with a grain of salt. If you haven't seen the movies, you should. I think they're all fantastic. The 6th movie being Air. Air came out in 2023, and I thought this movie was going to be a biopic. I thought it was going to be a biopic about Michael Jordan or something like that. And I'm not a really big biopic person because I don't think the storytelling is ever done really well in them. I think they kind of just use it as a highlight reel. Like, look at Michael, that came out recently. I think that was just a highlight film movie, and there's not a whole lot of storytelling that takes place. But Air, I wouldn't necessarily classify as a biopic. It was directed by Ben Affleck, and he purposely actually did not want a Michael Jordan lookalike or actor, or the focus really to be on Michael Jordan himself, because he didn't want to get lumped into, being a biopic. And instead, it's more focused on this deal that was made by Nike, this groundbreaking deal that was the first of its kind that Nike was able to pull off and how they did it. You have Matt Damon, who plays a salesperson for Nike, where his whole job is to kind of scope out athletes and try and figure out what good athletes are going to be good to bring to Nike to wear the shoes and wear their brand and be able to promote the company Nike. Ben Affleck is in it, where he plays the CEO of Nike. You have Chris Tucker, who plays a like assistant, another salesperson in the company of Nike. When you're watching this movie, I feel like you are transported back in time into the 90s, looking at the technology, the telephones, the phone in the box, phone in a car, how big the phones were, looking at their outfits and their clothing, that 90s style. Towards the end of the movie, they showed the actual people that the movie was about, and they showed pictures of those movies, and you're able to draw connections to the movie era itself, where they recreated those scenes and those pictures and, the CEO's car. And you have Matt Damon, who plays this overweight sales guy who kind of gambles with his decision makings at work and in life and sometimes loses. But this one feels different. He sees Michael Jordan and he is all in on Michael Jordan being the guy for Nike. We gotta close this deal so that we can get Michael Jordan. And nobody believes in him. Nobody thinks he can pull it off, but eventually they all start to work together, and then this company, Nike, is able to bring Michael Jordan into the company. And of course, the rest is history. To now, we see how, Michael Jordan and the company itself has accumulated hundreds of millions of dollars from this one deal that took place where nobody thought it could happen. And while I understand Affleck not wanting Michael Jordan in the movie, and I think to some aspect it really works, I wish they would have just had him in, one or two scenes where you could really see that the focal point of this is Michael Jordan. They do a really good job as far as showing Michael Jordan highlights and, how the Michael Jordan logo came about and all these different things. But I feel like just having a Michael Jordan lookalike for a scene or two, or just a couple lines of dialogue, would really allow you to get sucked more into this. That being said, that's very minimal, and I think the movie does a great job at capturing the corporation and company of Nike and having the focus be on these workers of Nike and creating this deal. And that's the focal point, and that's the story that wants to be told. So I understand that, but I do wish that Michael Jordan could have just had a couple scenes so that you could just really appreciate why, Nike wanted this deal so bad. So another sports related, based on a true story kind of movie that I think Matt Damon really demonstrated his range and did awesome in acting in his role. Number 5 is Ford vs. Ferrari. This was made in 2019 and directed by James Mangold, who also directed Logan. And Matt Damon strikes again with a really good, based on a true story, period piece, where you're able to get sucked into this world and get a really good feeling on how this story played out when it happened. This takes place in the 1960s, where Matt Damon plays Carroll Shelby, who is trying to create this groundbreaking vehicle for Ford. You have Matt Damon in this, you have Christian Bale, you have John Berthal. Christian Bale being the other lead role, and he is the driver that works with Matt Damon. And so while Shelby is trying to create this amazing car for Ford, he goes and meets with his old friend, this race car driver who is played by Christian Bale, and them together work to make this perfect, amazing new car that they can race in this, big 24-hour race that they have to go into against Ferrari and beat Ferrari. And I think Ferrari has won this race like 5-10 times already, and they're the top winners and they're the cream of the crop doing the best. But you have these two who are like, nope, we're going to create something special. We're going to go ahead and create this awesome car, and we're going to win the race this year. I think this movie has great racing scenes where you're really able to feel the magnitude on how fast they're going, the risk that they're undertaking by doing these kind of races, the effect that it takes, on the driver's body, on the driver's mentality. You're able to see how these companies really kind of go at each other, where you have Ford and Ferrari kind of battling to sabotage each other. It won an Academy Award for Best Sound Editing. It's a little bit of a long movie. It's 2.5 hours, but it really doesn't feel that way. It keeps you locked into the story and what's going on the whole time, and it doesn't feel like 2.5 hours. So another sports, racing, based on a true story kind of movie from Matt Damon, where Matt Damon is able to capture this gritty, resilient car designer, and you're able to see his story arc and how he overcomes those challenges and ultimately is working to accomplish what he wants to in creating this badass race car for Ford. Number 4, how could you not talk about Matt Damon's movie without mentioning The Departed? It was made in 2006. You have Matt Damon and Leonardo DiCaprio who star in this movie. You have Jack Nicholson, the great You have Mark Wahlberg in here for a second. Honestly, such an amazing classic movie. It won an Academy Award for Best Directing, Best Picture, and Matt Damon is playing this crooked cop where he is a goody two-shoe, very decorative cop, but in the background he's working for the mob. The lead role is DiCaprio, who's also kind of on the other side of that spectrum, right, where he is an undercover cop who is playing the role as, being part of the crime in the mob. And you see how these two guys really just kind of work off of each other and are trying to sabotage each other, trying to catch each other in the act. Going into this movie, I thought I knew what was going to happen. By the end of the movie, nope, I was completely wrong. I had no idea what was going to happen. The twists and turns in this movie, I think, are exceptional, and it's going to keep you thinking the whole movie. Jack Nicholson in the background playing this badass mob boss who's exceptional in what he does. This is just another beautifully well-shot movie that captures that mobster feel. So if you've been living under a rock and have not seen Departed, absolutely, it's a 10 out of 10. Go watch. Changing pace a little bit, and number 3 is The Martian. The Martian is a beautifully shot sci-fi movie directed by Ridley Scott again. It won a Golden Globe for Best Picture. And you have Matt Damon playing this astronaut where they go on a trip to Mars and he gets left behind. And everybody thinks he's dead. Like, how can this guy survive on Mars? But Matt Damon's Matt Damon. And so everybody thinks he's dead, but he is able to find ways to survive. And so with the minimal supplies that he has, he becomes self-efficient and he's able to survive while the NASA crew on Earth kind of figure this out and maybe figure out a way to go save him. And Matt Damon has a lot of screen time in this movie. He's essentially like the main character and one of the only big characters in the movie. So you just get a lot of time with Matt Damon, and you see his acting just capture the character's isolation, the challenges that he kind of undergoes, the mental and physical aspect of that, how he's able to persevere. It's another longer movie at 2.5 hours, but I think you're sucked in the whole time. I thought it was going to be kind of a slow burn, but it really keeps you engaged in the story and rooting for this character, rooting for Matt Damon to survive and hang on while his crew and teammates are able to come back and save him, hopefully. I think this is a staple in the sci-fi genre, and it's a must-watch for any sci-fi fan, so make sure you check this one out if you haven't. And so now we're getting into the last 2 movies that I really, really enjoy, and this is kind of a toss-up on which one that I like the most. Coming in at number 2, I want to talk about Talented Mr. Ripley. This was made in 1999. It has Matt Damon, it has Gwyneth Paltrow, it also has Jude Law. And this is Saltburn before Saltburn. It takes place in Italy in the 1950s, where you have this young guy, Tom Ripley, who is kind of nerdy, kind of awkward, maybe socially awkward. And he makes friends with his character, Dickie. And he gets to meet Dickie's friends, and he sees Dickie's life. Dickie is kind of like a rich playboy in Italy with lots of friends, lots of women. And over the course of the movie, you really see how Ripley is trying to take Dickie's place. And how he does it, I think, is just twisted, psychological, a little bit of a mind-blowing aspect. And you're going through the movie to see if Ripley is going to get caught in what he's trying to accomplish. And I really just like the psychological aspect of this movie, and the acting is so strong. Matt Damon is really able to tap into that kind of crazy, psychotic, but also you kind of feel for him and feel bad for the character, because you have this character that just really doesn't enjoy or love his life, and he's trying to take somebody else's, or be somebody else, be somebody that he's not. It's beautifully shot. You really get a feel for the European nightlife, the city life, being on a boat in the ocean, the architecture. So very underrated movie that I don't feel like I hear talked about a lot, but it's one of my favorites. So if you really want to get captured into Ripley's spiderweb of lies and really try and understand this story, then I think this one's going to be a psychological ride for you that you'll really enjoy. And then so number 1, one of my favorite movies, if not my favorite movie that I've ever watched, is Good Will Hunting. I love Good Will Hunting. I think the story is fantastic. The acting is fantastic. I don't really have any bad things to say about Good Will Hunting. It has Matt Damon and Ben Affleck in it, and it has the GOAT himself, Robin Williams. This movie was made in 1997, and I really think it was Matt Damon's breakout movie. Matt Damon plays Will Hunting, who has this genius-level IQ, but he's working as a janitor in MIT, and he's kind of on a crooked path. He's not reaching his full potential, he's making mistakes. He eventually gets arrested for attacking a police officer. To avoid severe punishment, he has to go to these meetings with a therapist who is played by Robin Williams. And so the whole movie is about, Robin Williams unlocking the potential in this young man. But then you also have this aspect of this young man unlocking the potential in this older, worn down therapist, Robin Williams, who has kind of accepted that the past is the past, his life is what it is, and maybe he's not reaching his full potential either. And throughout the movie, they're going back and forth, and it's almost like whose mind is stronger and whose mind is going to manipulate the others more. So they're kind of just in each other's heads throughout the movie, but then they ultimately just come to an understanding by the end of the movie. Robin Williams won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck won an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. I think it hits so much more knowing Robin Williams' story and how his life ultimately unfolded. I think that drew me into the movie a lot more and kept me thinking. But I think it's just a beautiful movie that is psychological and thought provoking and amazing acting all the way through. And this is why Matt Damon is one of my favorite actors, if not my favorite actor, because you have him playing this ancient Chinese warrior in The Great Wall. You have him playing these characters based off a true story as far as a rugby captain. You have him playing a race car automotive designer, salesman. You have him in the action-centric Bourne movies. And then you have these psychological, thought-provoking, beautiful movies that I've loved in Good Will Hunting and Talented Mr. Ripley. A couple honorable mentions. Matt Damon also starred in Oppenheimer, which was, of course, a great movie. I didn't include it on this list because I think he only has maybe like 15-20 minutes of screen time. He's also in Saving Private Ryan and Contagion, which I think is kind of similar, so I did not include those on this list. I'm still excited to see a couple of his other movies that I haven't seen yet, such as Rainmaker, which is another movie made in the 90s about him being a lawyer. And then you have a couple newer movies, Green Zone and Stillwater. If you've seen any of these other movies and you've really enjoyed them and they're some of your movies, let me know in the comments. Let me know if you think Matt Damon is underrated. If you've made it this far in the video, though, I appreciate you hanging out. I appreciate you listening to me rant about Matt Damon. I've really loved making these videos so far and just getting to talk about movies. I've watched a couple new movies that I probably wouldn't. If you like the video, please like, please subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments. I also go live on Twitch on Mondays and Wednesdays, so if you want to yap to me about movies there or yap to me about video games. But I will catch you guys on the next video, and always remember to love yourself and love each other.